And we're live promoting future hangouts. So I'll be reviewing chapter by chapter, Thus Spake Zarathustra, and going through the comedy version of the Ladybird book for adults, not kiddie winkies, The Hipster. So Jeff, which future hangouts would you like to promote?
Well, first of all, I can't wait for those because, I mean, they sound riveting. But I was going to say, obviously we're going to, review future more homicide episodes and future hangouts. But also, I have some stuff planned for my channel if I can, figure out how to do it in a way that works. And I want to. I did some videos. I'm not sure what you're doing now.
I'm trying to get it to focus.
Oh, okay. Well, I did some videos in the past called SP Myth and Truth a few years ago. You can see on my channel, the SP Spaz, where I talked about like the stereotypes of SPs and then like the reality of what actually SPs have in common with each other. Well, I kind of want to do that for like all of typology, not just, to kind of expand it to because, since I did those videos, I've gained a whole new holster full of bad misinformation that gets spread around type forums and Facebook groups and all that kind of stuff. So I'll cover some things that are common. I'll try to do like a sort of breakdown of what the Myers-Briggs system actually is, what it means, and then what it's distorted into by a lot of people who have an agenda and all that kind of good stuff.
You could do SJ myths.
Well, yeah, I mean, I'll eventually cover that kind of stuff, but I was talking about it on a more general basis, just breaking down some stuff. And I'm also going to do a video that's just a thank you to my subscribers, because the amazing thing is that I've made very few new videos over the past, more than a year. There haven't been very many on my channel, and yet my subscribers have continued to go up, and that's cool because it tells me that people have continued to see my videos and be interested in the stuff that I'm talking about, or at least think I'm entertaining enough or whatever, that they found it worthwhile to click the subscribe button. So I plan to do a video where I just do some thank yous to, and I can say here on Ben's channel that some of those subscribers are directly due to the promotion that Ben's done of my channel. So thank you, Ben, for supporting me.
Yes, it's always there's some people might think, has he got a thing for Jeff?
Well, the answer to that is everybody has a thing for Jeff.
Yep.
Because how could you not?
Yep.
But it's a friendship thing and a camaraderie. Not some other sinister thing. Yeah, even though I still have my suspicions that Ben is in a secret government organization, but we won't.
No. I told you not to talk about that.
We won't get into that now. We'll talk instead about some other secret government organizations, because Ben's going to summarize the Blake 7, the very first episode of Blake 7.
Okay. Without giving too many spoilers away. Now, this book is a comedy version. Now, what kind of Blake 7 books do I have? We have. I won't give you the title of that one.
Awful.
It's a little bit of a spoiler. In fact, I will turn it around so that you cannot see the name on the spine. So we have Blake 7 Program Guide by Tony Atwood. Don't get it, folks, until after you've seen the series. That's how big. There's some massive spoilers going on in there. Now we've got in the 1990s they brought out, and I don't know if you ever bought the Doctor Who program guides that they would bring out in the 1990s. Did you ever buy them, Jeff?
I have a Doctor Who book, but I forgot what it's called. It's over there somewhere.
So, for instance, they brought this one out, sort of like a guide called the Discontinuity Guide.
A Doctor Who book?
Yep. And this was like a funny guide because it would be those guides that would point out the mistakes, you know, where they would say great dialogue, dialogue disasters, dialogue to rewind for, all those sorts of things.
Okay, I've got the Doctor Who, the complete guide, fully revised and updated.
Is that a big, thick book?
That's the Doctor Who book I have.
Right. Anyway, so
this includes sections on TV, radio, cinema, stage, internet spin-offs, novels, and audio adventures, missing episodes, a website listing, and bibliography.
Well, I like this type because it's like the discontinuity guide, because it was like point out errors, like I said, bad dialogue, good dialogue, that sort of thing. Mm-hmm. So this Blake 7 guide is a spoof of this kind of book that would come out in the 1990s. And the way the cover is designed is that is not a real label. That is part of the cover. And all of these aged bits on the edges are part of the cover. And so this crease is not a real crease. It's a printed crease. And it will have things like the complete guide to all 64 episodes. There were only 52 episodes. So they made up 12 episodes for this sort of comedy guide. And in here, the way back, it's got a guide to the... There's some silly jokes. Right, because like I said, it's a spoof guide. Information. According to the title, Blake's 7, but he's clearly nearer 40. Right, right, so you get little things like Varon appears to be both a solicitor and a barrister. He also seems genuinely surprised that there might be corruption in the Federation. Where's he been? Right, yeah, so it's pretty. So this society, this Blake 7 society, is. Some people have said it's not so much a fascist government. It's a bit like an East German society, where you have there's government surveillance everywhere. They pump drugs into the atmosphere to pacify the populace, to maybe turn SPs into SJs.
Yeah, I had like at the beginning, I had a hard time following it. I mean, I got that it was something about drugs or like memory erasing stuff or something like that. But like the first 5 minutes, I really did not get what was going on, other than that the one guy had gone 36 hours without eating, which sounded like he should be, collapsing on the ground. But I was like, maybe these aren't like regular humans, and they're, some sort of species that can go longer without eating.
Yeah, and he's not the thinnest actor, Gareth Thomas. So the.
But did he go by a different name at the beginning? Because I didn't hear the name Blake until later on.
Oh, they called him Rog because his name's Roger Blake, R-O-J.
Because the first time I remember someone saying the name Blake was when he was talking to the older guy that was trying to like fill him in on his past that he'd forgotten.
Yeah, I think he was a Canadian actor, that guy. Could you understand him okay?
Yeah, I think so.
So what happened? So the premise is that Blake was a terrorist leader and they tell him, so he goes to this political meeting, and these sort of like these resistance leaders, he turns up and he says, look, you were the leader of the resistance. The Federation caught you, brainwashed you, and had you denounce all your fellow freedom fighters. And he says, oh, of course, this is absurd. And then eventually it starts to come back to him that he was this terrorist leader who had his mind messed with in order to become this reformed citizen who would denounce, because like you're taking the figurehead of the resistance and then turning him into a defender of the Federation.
So the girl that he was talking to at the beginning, like, who was she? I mean, she was just somebody that recognized him and tried to get him back to his old self, or like I didn't understand how he got to that meeting in the first place. You know, like the meeting where everybody gets shot.
I think
Like,
it was.
no spoiler.
Yeah, that's okay. And there's a bit where there's one point where Blake said, "Look, I was told you would be able to tell me something about my family, something like that." And then they said, "No, you've got to come along to this meeting." And they sort of like blackmailing him.
So, so it's just sort of implied somebody reached out to him, because I didn't get how that, like, how he went from, you know, thinking that he's just part of the Federation or whatever to being joining up with these other people.
Well, what
Or
happened?
even listening to them in the first place. Like, why did he go 36 hours without eating? Like, why did he listen
Because he was told he would be given some information about, I think, his family.
Okay, so it started as he's trying to find out stuff about his family.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
somehow he finds out this girl was supposed to tell him something.
Yeah, about his family.
Okay.
And then he goes to this meeting. They tell him those things, and then he says, "Look, this is a bit too much to handle," something like that. And he walks away.
Right.
And then he sees the Federation come in. But this is still setting it up, folks, and they get slaughtered.
Yeah, I pretty much understood everything from that point on.
Right.
At the very beginning, I had a hard time figuring out what was going on.
Yeah.
Because they really don't. There's like no explanation. It's just like he goes right into him being like, okay, I did what you told me, now give me the information or something. But you don't really, there's no like backstory at the beginning at all. He just shows up.
And so they have this thing where, so that he comes back, and they then fit him up for a crime. And then comes into the jail cell, and he says, "No, it doesn't matter. I'll just admit to the crimes." And the guy says, the solicitor says, "Are you sure? Come and have a look at these crimes." And Blake says, "But these crimes involve children." And so yeah, they were fitting Blake up.
So I had a question about that too, because I was like, is this supposed to be a euphemism, or are they implying that it's like supposed to be like sexual crime?
Oh yes,
children?
yes,
Okay.
it's
because they didn't actually say that, so that's why I was wondering if this is trying to be implied.
Yeah, because what happened was they had this turn up. You know, they had the chart. You know, there was a graphic where the charges came up, and some of them were like attempt to corrupt, conspire to corrupt, incite corrupt acts, kidnapping, assault, intent to injure, and then there was this thing about the children went through lie detector tests.
Right.
But what they did is they implanted the memories of the abuse into the children.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the good guy solicitors found out that all of those children were away from school on the same day and admitted to a clinic. And so they were saying, look, they all went to this clinic. And so you can make the link that they had the information implanted in their brains.
Yep. And they,
the experience of being sexually assaulted.
Convicted, you know, the lawyer tries to research all that.
Yeah.
And he's found evidence, but then they show that at some point they catch him because he and his wife or girlfriend or whatever are lying on the ground.
Yeah, I mean, in future, folks, we'll try not to give away as many spoilers, but it just set things going.
Well, I mean, the way I look at it is like if we're saying we're putting in the title of the video where we're going to review an episode, so anything in that episode should be fair game. Like we don't spoil any future thing.
Yeah, it's review.
Like with homicide,
review, not preview.
Yeah, with Homicide, I mean, I resisted. I have to restrain myself because obviously I've seen the whole series, So I know what happens to all the characters, and I think I did a pretty good job of not, giving away any of those future plot lines, because it would be easy for me to spoil a lot of stuff if I wanted to.
Yeah.
But I think once you're talking about we're covering this episode, then you
Yeah,
talk about
that's
everything
fair
that
enough.
happened in that episode.
Yeah,
And it's great in both cases because neither one of us know what's going to happen next.
right, okay. Yeah,
Because I don't know what happens in Blake 7, and you don't know what happens.
Then I'm going to try and keep quiet about it. So like I said, so yeah, you're right. Review, not preview.
Yeah.
So
yeah, in the first episode, everything I'm saying happened was in the first episode because that's all I've seen so far. Other than
right, okay.
A few other clips that Ben showed me a while back that I don't mostly remember, but
yeah.
And I think I saw a few minutes of it as a kid at some point because I think they did show it on the same PBS station that showed Doctor Who, but I don't remember ever really getting interested. I think my older brother might have watched it a little bit more of it than I did because he, just kind of had the thing where like anything sci-fi related, he would give more of a chance than I would, whereas I was much more quick to dismiss something as boring if I wasn't instantly entertained by it.
He might have liked Avon as well and connected with Avon. Because young INTPs can be like INTJs.
There was a show called The Tripods that he watched.
Yes.
I never got into that one either, but he liked that one a lot.
Yeah.
The other, excuse me, the other show from around that era that was a British sci-fi thing that I did watch more of was The Tomorrow People.
Ah, yes. Oh, I've just got just want to show people what Tripods is like. I've got the VHS for the kids out there. VHS. Yeah, the Tripods. It was actually pretty good special effects for it. They'd have like 4 times the budget of. And the writer tried to say, "Oh, I didn't know about War of the Worlds. I didn't know they had walking machines with 3 legs." Written by H.G. Wells.
Yeah,
I didn't
the
know.
Tripods and the Tomorrow People were both shown in America in the early 80s on Nickelodeon. It was the very early days of Nickelodeon. See, that's another thing the kids may not know. The Nickelodeon actually started as a no commercials premium cable network. And it wasn't originally owned by MTV networks. That came about later. So MTV bought it and then ruined it. But occasionally over the years later on, there were good shows on Nickelodeon, like iCarly, for instance. So there were, it wasn't all terrible, but for the most part, it was never as good as it was at the beginning. But at the beginning, they were a little bit starved for programming, so they had the kids show that came on in the mornings called Pinwheel, and it was like 4 hours long. Because they didn't have enough shows, so they would do 4 hours of Pinwheel. It's kind of like how the news, the networks, would have like the really long morning news network shows. Like NBC had Today Show, and they had CBS This Morning and Good Morning America, and they're mostly just the same stuff repeated over and over again with like a few interviews sprinkled in. So Pinwheel was a lot of like little, and it sounds like a funny comparison, but it was sort of like a kid's version of Monty Python in a way with the cartoons that they had, because Monty Python had used the animation stuff as sort of interludes between sketches, and Pinwheel did the same thing between their, whatever their main parts were. They had these little cartoon things that were sort of interludes between. So, but they were, they were really kind of cute little artistic things that they stuck in there. So anyway, don't need to go on a long thing about Nickelodeon, but so yeah, the Blake 7, they get on the ship and because when he's convicted of the thing that he's going to go to the prison planet or whatever, or space station or whatever it is, prison colony, and so they've got all the people on the transport ship, and then the security dude says, it's going to be like an accident, quote unquote. So they're going to, shoot it down or whatever they're going to do to have the accident. But then the show ends before you see what happens.
What did you think of the blonde chick, Jenna Stannis?
Well, she was interesting.
Right.
You know, it was kind of it had a cool quality, just all the characters in the sense that you didn't know because there were people that were gunned down, didn't know who was going to survive even through the first episode. So,
Mm.
you know, when each character's first introduced, like, you know, you don't necessarily figure out who's actually going to be permanent, or at least regular, you know, because by the end of the first episode, everyone that Morgan had called cute was dead, pretty much.
I know.
Oh,
Cute ones.
I thought that the blonde chick was cuter than the other ones, but that was just my opinion.
Wrong.
Morgan disagreed with me. We don't necessarily have the same taste in women all the time.
did Morgan like? Yeah, go on.
He liked the first girl, whatever her name was. I don't even remember.
Was it the chick, the girlfriend of the lawyer?
Well, she's cute too.
Yeah.
But the first girl, who was with the first guy, they both dragged the guy into the meeting.
Yeah, one of the many
Right. Yeah.
massacred ones.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was like, come on, you're really gonna shoot the cute? Oh, they shot her.
I didn't think she was that cute myself.
So Morgan, what did you think of the episode?
The episode?
Yeah.
Similar to where I had no idea what was going on at first and it seemed like boring, and then it actually had some story to it, and I was like, oh, okay. I actually want to see the next one.
Very good. Then it's done its job.
Yeah, and you want to see the next homicide, right?
Oh yes.
Okay, so there you go. So we
Yeah, I liked the
this
initial homicide camera work. They changed that pretty early on.
Yeah, well, that's one of the things I talked about is the network was like, oh, it's too jerky.
Because it was like
You
supposed to be like realistic, like someone was following them. And
Right. Now, I mean, one aspect of it they kept because they used handheld cameras throughout the whole show.
Right.
They didn't cave on that, but they took some of the like jerkier movements away after the early episodes.
Oh,
So,
yeah.
and they brightened it slightly. They had, you know, they took away some of the sort of grainy, dark effects that were added to the early episodes.
It's even worse on Battlestar Galactica Mark II, where they would make it handheld in like the first season, and then very grainy. I think to help cover up the special effects.
Man, the worst thing ever, like I think it contributed to the death of soap operas in America when they tried to go all modern or whatever you want to call it. Like soap operas have a very definite sort of traditional look to them.
Yeah,
And
everyone's
soap opera audiences
attractive.
tend to be very loyal, and so they don't want those things to change.
Yeah.
But because ratings were already slipping, the networks were like, oh, we need to change some things to make them all hip and stuff. So they switched to HD cameras, which, I mean, everybody was doing that. So that part itself
Yeah.
wasn't necessarily a bad thing, although it's, like you've talked about before, it sort of highlights the flaws in your set and things like that. But then they decided we were going to start using these handheld cameras, and they were going to have everything in these forced perspective shots, and they just monkeyed around with the camera work and made it just, they're going to, oh, we're going to have much more outdoor locations. Because soap operas tend to,
Yeah.
I mean, pretty much everything takes place inside most of the time, and when they do it outside, it's still very obviously studio. Is
Yeah,
just
I mean-
they'll have something like the docks or some place that's like it's outside, but it's not really outside, and then
Yeah.
they'll have occasional like location shoots where they actually go somewhere where they're and that's more of a big deal, but yeah, they messed with it all, and it was not a popular thing, and they switched back to making it more traditional looking. But by the time they did that, they had lost some audience from that.
Yeah, I mean, if you're going to do shit Steadicam, you've got to do it so it's only slight and you don't notice it. So it's sort of almost subliminal, where you get used to it, where it's very, very slight.
I got the idea what they were trying to do because it was like, soap operas. It was always like, well, you always see it from these angles because the set is 3 walls, the cameras are on the 4th wall, and you don't see that. And they were like, oh, well, in this new way of shooting, we can bring the camera 360 degrees around, and you can see that it's a whole house, as opposed to there being a one side of the room that you never see because that's. But it just was way too distracting.
Oh, yeah, and
to shoot it that way.
I wouldn't. I think that's a. Oh, there. You okay, Jeff?
Yeah.
Oh, there's a bit of distortion there. You might have caught the mic.
I
I
was
think.
just receiving a transmission from my cyber controllers.
Oh, okay. Doctor Who reference, folks.
Yeah.
Uh, I
In a video about a Terry Nation show, we're allowed to make Doctor Who.
Oh yes, definitely. Even though it's a rival of the Daleks. In fact, one of the I forgot what I was going to say.
That I'm awesome. That's just pretty much the default. You know, if you ever.
Yeah. That doesn't need to be said. Some
It
things
does
need.
as often as possible.
Right. So what was? Oh yes, when you're talking there about direction, these directors, they need to like pull their necks in, get a sense of perspective. That it's about when they're on a soap, it's about doing their job. It's not about getting flashy and like doing things for your own benefit rather than the show.
Yeah, well,
It's,
the final days of One Life to Live, the producer there, Frank Valentini, who's now the producer for General Hospital, he was actually the reason he kept his job longer than any executive producer in the history of that show was because he did exactly that, and he saved the network money whenever possible. So he
yeah,
was known as like he was like the stingiest when it came to the budget, but uh, he still tried to listen to the actors, so the actors liked him better than some of the previous
yeah,
producers because he still tried to accommodate the actors. One of the things he did that they didn't like as much was shooting a lot of things out of order because soap operas
yeah,
used to be a lot more like live theater, where it was pretty much we're doing this in the order that the plot is taking place. But to try to save money, what Valentini did a lot of, we have blocks of recording where these actors, we could have them in for 3 or 4 days, and then they can shoot all their scenes
right,
for the next month or whatever. But because some of the plots, would involve multiple characters, or you would have one involved with a different thing, they could shoot a scene that was like a month in advance of the next scene because that was what was convenient when they had that actor to do that part. So sometimes they would get confused as to, what is my character experiencing when I'm doing this, because
yeah,
stuff is out of order and I don't know what's going on. But anyway,
yeah.
um,
It's okay. And sort of see both points of view on that. What's best for the performance, but what's best for the production.
right. It's a balance like everything else. But Morgan also commented on the costumes, saying that they were pretty good for a 70s weird British sci-fi show. So
Yeah, I
he
think that
liked
was
he liked the gas mask thing, whatever, on
yeah.
the security forces or whatever.
One of the things that's neat about that is it means that you can reuse about the same 6 blokes
Yeah,
because you don't see their
yeah.
faces.
It's like we were talking about the other day about Doctor Who using characters or actors that played monsters. They'd bring them back and characters you could actually see their faces, because you wouldn't recognize them since they were monsters and under all the makeup and costume before.
There's one episode that's quite a bit like Star Wars, and that's called Project Avalon.
Hey man, don't be spoiling the future
No.
episodes.
No. That's a good one, Project Avalon.
Yeah, I mean, I could name off some of my favorite Homicide episodes, but I don't want to reveal too much of that. I'll give a non-plot related spoiler and say that there's several renowned actors who make guest appearances in Homicide episodes, including Robin Williams and Bruno Kirby and James Earl Jones, just to name a few.
Oh, good.
Burn Notice, the main character is a punk kid on the show.
Yeah, apparently the main character from Burn Notice, which I've never seen, but yeah, there's several actors that they're on the show as younger people who went on to be famous for other things later as well, like Elijah Wood, who maybe best known in recent years as Frodo from the Lord of the Rings movies. Um, he he's in a Homicide episode too, and so is Jake Gyllenhaal.
I'll show you, because I have a Blake 7 book, the pictures of 3 characters who have yet to turn up in Blake 7 in the first season.
Don't show me the pictures of the ones I haven't seen yet.
Oh, you don't want to see them? Okay.
No, gotta let me experience all the characters,
Okay.
raw for the first time,
Do you want to see one of the...
Because one of the things I actually made the mistake of, because I didn't know I was going to end up watching so much Doctor Who again, is that when I sort of was getting back into Doctor Who again in whatever that was, 2005, 6, whatever, I was on the BBC website, and I looked up, I was showing Morgan some of it, and I gave away too much stuff, not only to him, but to me.
Right.
And I reacquainted myself with too many things, like what the final story and beginning story of each Doctor was and things like that. So there was less surprises to me when I was watching it because I knew too much.
Right.
So it gives me the opportunity with something like this that I really don't know much about to, keep myself in suspense as much as possible.
I won't show you.
Yeah,
There's 3 really good characters coming up, well performed. You've got Avon, who you've seen a bit of before. He's like he's from the next episode on, super INTJ, and he's the sort of INTJ that INTJ science fiction fans will be their role model for the kind of comments he makes. And there's a video out there, folks, called Avon's Best Jibes and Putdowns. And there's another character called Servalan. And she turns up pretty soon. Can I explain who Servalan is, Jeff?
No, just let me see it. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I think you might find her quite attractive. And then there's a character called Travis as well, played by Stephen Greif. He's a good baddie.
I will say about Homicide that there is some turnover in detectives as the show goes on. I mentioned Kellerman earlier. He's ESTP that comes along later. There's another probably ISFJ guy that joins the cast in the last few seasons too. So there's a few other characters to look forward to, though. I think it's probably true. A lot of people think of a lot of shows that the original cast was probably still the best, but I liked most of the later characters. I liked most of the characters, period, on the show. There was really only as far as like the main detective, there's really only one character I can think of that I really didn't think lent much to the show at all, but for the most part they all were somewhat interesting. And there's some interesting dynamics over the years with the characters that stay through the whole show, because they switch partners over the course of the time, and you get kind of those different dynamics, and you see how they change from their experiences with their partners and ex-partners and stuff, and see how it kind of changes their approach to things when the less experienced detectives become the more experienced ones.
Right. So, what did you think about the setting in Blake 7? The sort of the world they created.
It's kind of limited so far, which part of that I like, in that it's funny because again, a lot of things I'm the contrarian, and what I noticed in several shows that I've seen people talk about, but a lot of Doctor Who, people use phrases like studio bound.
Yeah.
And they make it as if it's this weakness of a show, and that a show that gets out and has more locations and film sequences and things like that's somehow a better thing. I usually think the opposite is true. I like the studio stuff. Part of that may be some of my experience in theater, that I'll just say like one of my favorite Doctor Who stories ever was The Keeper of Traken, which is, entirely a studio thing, and it's sort of like a theater thing if you had a lot of different sets, or at least
Uh,
not a whole lot of different sets, but enough that it kind of changes the backgrounds and stuff. But I like utilizing, not necessarily a lot of space and turning it into something that's cool. Having the strength be the story and the characters and the acting and just those elements, rather than having a bunch of special effects and just a lot of different stuff being thrown at the audience. I appreciate doing more with less, I guess is a way to sum that up.
I think
So-
on Blake 7, they had a maximum. They could only have 10 minutes of film per episode because it was expensive.
With that first episode, I'd say that, they had the line about, why would he want to go outside? And I like that because I'm like, immediately it sort of tells the audience, that you're in this world where it's very confined, that it kind of lends credence to what you were saying earlier about the government being kind of the, limiting freedom, because they're saying, we need to keep everybody in this enclosed area, and so we can control them better and, all that. So it did an effective job of establishing that part of it. Things looked kind of drab, but that may have sort of been the point,
Yeah, and even early on,
that it's kind of, you don't have a lot of color and stuff, because that encourages people to think independently and all that, instead of just following the program like they're supposed to.
yeah, I think it's sort of based on sort of like in East German society, and even early on, you see a camera, and of course, since then, there's a lot more cameras around, and so it's quite prophetic in that instance. And I think they went on location in like a train station, like the sound of the Federation. What's weird is that's based on the same sound as on the tube in London. And so when I heard it in London, it's like, oh no, it's like being in Blake 7. Because it's that same like speakerphone thing, the same tannoy system.
Yeah, well, I imagine that was probably the case if, kids in the UK or whatever, if they heard doors that opened with a sound that was like the Dalek doors or something, because they had that same sound to them always, the whirring doors that opened and closed.
Right. That's right. Some of the things, let's see what this book says. The comedy book, The Way Back. So, writer Terry Nation, director Michael E. Bryant. He's directed some Doctor Who's. Oh yeah, so did you notice? Because a lot of the production staff were the same as on Doctor Who. So did you notice any things that you thought were Doctor Who-ish in terms of the way it was made?
Not really, other than just like I said, the studio thing. Kind of having that same kind of look to it. But it was significantly different, though. I didn't get the impression where it was just like, oh, well, this is just a different part of the Doctor Who universe. It seemed to definitely have its own kind of style.
Yeah, and it was aimed at an adult audience.
Yeah, yeah, I got that from it. It wasn't exactly kid-friendly.
No, as the main plot indicates.
Yeah.
So we've got here some names of the people in it. Guest stars. Robert Beattie, he was Bran Foster, so the guy with the Canadian accent. Michael Halsey was Tel Varen. Pippa Steele was Major Varen, so that's the one that Morgan liked. Jeremy Wilkin, Dev Tarrant.
The names are too similar to each other. That'd be one complaint.
Yeah.
Because like two of the names you just said sound. I'm like, wait a minute, what? Tel.
Yeah, no, that's bad. Tel Varen and Dev Tarrant. Yeah, that's bad.
Yeah.
Robert James Venglind. Gillian Bailey with Valor. Probably one Morgan Knight. Alan Butler, Richie. Susan Field was Morag. So, yeah, that was something that was established, wasn't it? That there was a society in which women were on a par with men. I suppose it sort of established that as well. Because before he did Blade 7, he wrote the series Survivor, where the lead character was female. I think The Survivors, about surviving after a nuclear holocaust.
I remember that because they showed a few of those on like some cable channel in America. So I remember seeing a little bit of it.
Right, so we have here opening shot. Remember, this is a slightly spoofy book. Opening shot. A Federation security camera watching a white BBC corridor, then a pan across to Blake standing next to some polystyrene. A taste of things to come. Then you got, you just described the story. Dr. Havant, try not to think. Random insult. Can't think of anything worse than Blake's rap sheet. Yeah, all the stuff about the children. In a nutshell, grim future dystopia, Blake 7. No, it's put here. Grim future dystopia, Bleaks 7. Story. Here we go. Rog finds his world turned inside out when an old friend reveals to him that his family have been murdered by the Terran Federation and that Blake himself is a former rebel leader whose memory has been erased. Rocked by these discoveries, Blake agrees to meet with other rebels, but they are betrayed and wiped out by Federation troops. Blake is arrested on a false charge of child molestation and put on public trial in order to discredit him and quash the rebellion. Convicted and tried for murder, Blake is sentenced to life on the Federation penal colony Cygnus Alpha. So that gives you an idea that this is the opposite of Star Trek. Did you get that impression? That it's like in Star Trek.
Opposite of.
Yeah, in terms
Not
of.
really.
Opposite in terms of where Star
Trek
Trek
a lot
is
less beeping than Star
Yeah.
Trek.
Well, what I mean is like Star Trek's utopian. This is dystopian.
Hey, Star Trek, you always had that background sounds the whole time. You have that little.
Yeah. What I mean by opposite,
all the time.
what I mean by opposite is that Star Trek's utopian, and you know, the good guys, you're going to get these positive endings in nearly every episode. Whereas in Blake 7, the forces of antagonism are a lot greater against the good guys, or the goodish guys.
Yeah, it was effective that way. To relate to another sci-fi series, the original V, and even the remake of V was like that to an extent, where it had that kind of quality to it, where you didn't know who was next, who was going to die, who was going to turn out to be a traitor. There was a lot of that suspense in it, where you had that. Yeah, it wasn't just follow the same formula where at the end of the episode, Captain Kirk makes his log and. Here's what we learned from this civilization, Yeah, it was. So V was another good example of a show that did that very effectively.
So we got here. Some of the information in the film. I'll do this joke again. According to the title, Blake's 7, but he's clearly nearly 40. Terry Nation sets out his stall early with all of his.
I didn't get that the first time. You were saying that Blake's age was 40.
Yeah, because it was this. It says, here we go. According to the title, Blake's 7, but he's clearly nearer 40.
See, the first time you read that, I got that it was a joke, but I thought it was saying that there were like 40 people instead of 7.
Right.
So I didn't get it. I was just like, they're saying there was 40 people on the ship.
Right. So what do you think of the joke now?
I told Morgan, I was like, apparently, I'm going to take a wild guess and say 7 of the people on the ship survive along with Blake. That's my bold prediction. But anyway, what was I going to say? I was going to relate to another. Oh, I was going to say my favorite all-time Doctor Who story, the Daleks' Master Plan, has that same kind of bleak kind of thing to it because, without spoiling too much of that, if anybody happens to ever see that story, there are multiple main characters that get killed in it, and so there's very much that feeling of, oh, who's next? You know, are we going to make it at the end of the story with any of our characters surviving?
Also, in the Daleks' Master Plan, there's a nice little scene where they actually put flamethrowers on the Daleks, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah,
there were several great scenes in that, but it had that feeling of like, you know, there's characters where you would think, there's a character that ends up surviving, that there's a point at which he might get killed, and it wouldn't have been a shock if he did because of what they'd established already. So they kind of set that up where there's a real feeling of, you know, you don't have that, oh, well, I know the main 2 or 3 people are not gonna die because they're the main characters. And because we were willing to kill off main characters, you're like, man, I don't know, this guy might have bit the dust too. So there's that very much that feeling of desperation in every crisis, because you don't know who's going to make it out alive.
Right. So what we got next? We've got Varron appears to be both a solicitor and a barrister. He also seems genuinely surprised when there might be corruption in the Federation. Where's he been? Well, he has been on the drugs though. The SJ drugs.
It's kind of like when you have the callers to talk radio that are like, I was listening to the politicians on the TV, and I think he said something that wasn't quite the truth. Like they're surprised that they heard a politician lying about something.
Yep. Then we've got here, going outside is a Category 4 crime. That's up there with punching babies. That said, it's not the worst crime Blake's going to have to his name. Weather report, it's 16 millimeters outside. When Varron goes on a dangerous mission outside the dome to find evidence... When Varron goes on a dangerous mission outside the dome to find evidence of corruption, he takes his wife. This is fortunate for the administration, who want them both dead. Blake's charges include assault on a minor, attempting to corrupt a minor. Of course, it could be minor with an O, but it's not made clear. Since Blake's reaction is to fly off the handle somewhat, we have to assume that one or the other has touched a nerve. So either minor with an E or minor with an O. Despite the stories of tranquilizers being placed in food and drinking water, none of the main characters act remotely drugged. That's probably right for Ven Glind and Dr. Havant, but shouldn't the Varrons be affected at least? Yes, maybe the higher ups. Blake's conditioning sequence is shown 3 times. Oh yeah, I like that scene.
Yeah, that was actually a similar thing to Homicide that I actually thought of when I saw that, because they did that, because that's a frequent thing Homicide does, where it repeats the scene like 3 times rapidly.
Yeah, I thought that was very, very good scene where it's talked about they conditioned your mind. Then it shows that sequence of him being in like this CAT scan, where it shows him being beaten and him being brainwashed.
There's also the sound.
Yeah, that clicking, yeah.
And on Homicide became known as the Sting.
Yeah.
You'll become familiar with it as you watch the show, because it's like this vroom sound that they put in, like when there's like this sort of dramatic moment or change of scenery or whatever. So yeah, they had some similar.
Your sensing type, you may have noticed this. Dudley Simpson's score twinkles annoyingly when the prosecution and defense globes. Dudley Simpson's score twinkles annoyingly when the prosecution and defense globes flash during the judgment sequence. Unfortunately, the globes don't flash in time, leaving the music in a time signature never before heard by human ears. It comes as a surprise to no one except Blake that Jeremy Wilkin is the traitor. What have we got here? Okay, this is not much of a... Then this isn't a spoiler. Michael Keaton plays Villa completely differently in this episode to the other 63. Here, he's wily, sneaky, weaselly thief. Everywhere, he's witty, idle, comic relief figure, and often the one character able to speak the truth. Both work. Nigel Lambert as the bored computer records chap is brilliant. Yeah, what did you think of that guy? He was like, I think he was wearing the video glasses, the one who like took bribes.
What about him?
Did you think he was okay as an actor?
Yeah, I mean, I thought they were all pretty good actors. It seemed like.
Yep. So we've got here.
It wasn't. I'd say that there's nobody that stood out as being a bad actor. I'll just put it
Yeah. Nigel Lambert as the bored computer records chap is brilliant. When he's dancing with his musical sun specs on, he's the only person in the episode enjoying himself. Lambert went on to narrate "Look Around You." Thanks, Nigel Feigl. Blake really doesn't like the light bulb in his cell. Liesl Renor was inspected by Dr. A.J. Globs, Deeka Cole by Dr. Painter Hammer, and Fane Painter by the Dr. Scene Wen. Did they really think that Globs sounded like a futuristic name? We can't help thinking that the Federation made a bit of a blunder by appointing a free-thinking, investigative barrister as Blake's defense.
Well, you know, they figured the drugs wouldn't wear off.
Yeah.
But the Dr. Glob's thing, like, I mean, I've known there's actual doctors in the area I live named Dr. Payne, Dr. No, and Dr. Feaster, just to name a few. So I never think any doctor names are weird after hearing some of the ones I have.
Is there any called like Dr. Rip?
Yeah, but
Rest in peace.
I'm losing my consciousness, so it's probably time to wrap up this.
I will just read through this quickly. This Justice computer thing is a bit like the National Lottery draw. Justice Machine. Guinevere Justice Balls, set number 12. And there's Terence Trent D'Arby to press the button. We get to see lots of the episode. It really should have had a credit. The couches in Venglin's Justice Department office were previously used in the Doctor Who story The Robots of Death, also directed by Michael Bryant. They belonged to Bryant personally and were of a type made by his brother James, who sold them around the Birmingham area. That might be a bit of bull, I'm not sure. There's some fine model work at this stage of the series. The matte shots of the dome exterior are magnificent. The London takeoff sequence are nice too. We love the two chaps standing in the bottom right corner of the screen, watching the ship take off. Brilliantly, they're not there in the preceding shot. Apparently, the money ran out quite quickly. The prisoners make their way to the London very slowly to ensure the guard can say all his lines before they reach the other end of the set. Given that the confinement mode for the chairs on the London is essentially a seatbelt, why not confine the prisoners on the ship rather than wait for them to put seatbelts on? In the final panning shot across the interior of the prison ship, you can catch sight of actor Paul Darrow. The producers were so impressed with his performance as non-speaking prisoner that they gave him a speaking part the following week. That's just more bullshit. His canny agent negotiated a deal which ensured Darrow would take over the lead should the series run for more than 2 years, much to the annoyance of Gareth Thomas, who had to slum it at the National after the second. That's more bull. Villa still got Blake's wallet. Closing shot, Blake's coming again. Here we go. Delightful dialogue. Villa. I hate personal violence, especially when I'm the person. Jenna. I was trading around the free worlds. I'm a free trader. And we all know what that means, the dirty minx. Right. Ravella to Blake. Doesn't it bother you that you spend your life in a state of drug-induced tranquility? It's unlikely, you see, he's in a state of drug-induced tranquility. Oh, that's clever. Doesn't it bother you that you spend your life in a state of drug-induced tranquility? It's unlikely, you see. He's in a state of drug-induced tranquility, so it doesn't bother him. God, take a long look. It's the last you'll ever see of it. Blake, no, I'm coming back. Right, okay, I won't mention that episode. Amateur Hour. It's going to be over soon. The first wobbly set in the series. It's the sub-43 dome exit tunnel. A guard knocks the set as he comes down the stairs to arrest Blake. We can assume Min means crimes committed against minors. Here we go. This is the rap sheet. Oh, get the camera out. This is the rap sheet. This appears in the episode of the crimes Blake commits. This appears on the not CGI, CSO. So there we go. Those are the crimes: corrupt, kidnapping, intent to injure, moral deviation. We can assume Min means crimes committed against minors. Per is crimes against persons. Dev must be talent. Oh, here we go. Talents, but we don't need to know about that. Right. Right. Important fact: The Way Back is also the title of the 2010 film starring Colin Farrell. Right. Okay. Planets Earth. Spaceisms. Viz tapes. Picture tapes. Right. So, anything to add, Jeff?
He's not there.
Okay. I will end the hangout. Although the rest of the time Jeff is, though. Right. Bye-bye, folks.